Just as a note,
It's
Broxah
just-
streams for TL, everyone. So just be aware of, you know, you playing jungle for them next year, Broxah?
Would you like to make any announcements?
Wait, oh sorry, I just got a call coming from Steve. Oh no, mind.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Recall, a mostly bi-weekly show about everything that's global competitive League of Legends. I'm still Frosk. I'm still joined with the lovely Broxah and Medic, and this week we're talking everything MSI. As the groups have been decided, the dust has settled, we know who is going to be going to our Champions Tournament. And guys, I feel like everything was like building up to these incredible finals, but then in both North America and Europe, we got not reverse sweeps, but kind of like losers bracket run back 3-0s in finals. Both EG and G2 taking the titles.
The fun part for me, the fun part for me is that the last time we did an episode, I remember Medic talking about how he thought it would be so good for the teams to have more games, and I was trying to create the argument for the other side, saying that it would be better to just, you know, sweep their way through the winner bracket. And I've actually been thinking about it both when watching the LEC finals and NA, that, you know, now I have to come here and admit that Medic was right all along. It's really not ideal.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this one split, I've been correct. Maybe the rest of the time you're right, but this one time I'm gonna hold my head high. Yeah, I outthought Broxah when it came to professional League of Legends. So.
I
You
have
knew it
this
all
working
along.
theory that like league teams aren't actually good enough to like find a perfect strategy to counteract someone else. It's all just about how well you do your strategy. So like the more games that you play just doing your strategy, the stronger it makes you, as opposed to like actually getting tape on your opponent. Because outside of like the coaching and like the analysts, like the player's just gonna be like, yeah, I knew for sure he was going to ward at 423, so I knew to set up this trap right here and counter it. It's like, nah, I press my buttons better than him.
Yeah. This time I remembered just before I went all in that the jungler might be topside, so I decided to back away and didn't get killed.
Okay,
Yeah.
but down to business. We're about 1 week away from the start of MSI. In Group A, we have Detonation Focus Me, we've got the Buffaloes, T1, Team A's, and I'm going to be really honest. When you look at these groups, it pretty much seems entirely decided. You know, maybe there's some fun conversation about what is going to be like the second wildcard or minor region team that pops out after the RNGs and the T1s. But Group 3, I find really interesting, because while this should be a free ride for both G2 and EG, no matter what order you want to put them, 1 or 2, if Team Order, the Oceanic representative, just decides to mess someone up, there's no second chances, you know what I mean? I find Group 3 actually really spicy because of this.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, we've already seen Order play a little bit of a upset. Not Order, sorry, an OS team play upset last year at MSI, right? Like, the Pentanet taking games off C9 is the reason that C9 didn't make it out of the Rumble stage and didn't make it to the semifinals and didn't have the chance to, like, prove themselves on the biggest stage. So, if Order can do the same, it would be miraculous, and it would be such a storyline, especially considering they're in the group with only 3 teams. So, all of these guys are going to play each other a lot. Probably going to see more EU-NA games this MSI than we've seen in like the last 4 years combined or so, just because of how much they're playing each other.
It's the Battle of the Atlantic, the
Exactly.
true Battle of the Atlantic over
Oh yeah,
again.
it's gonna be good.
I will say, kind of before we move into some of the other, like, who are our number 2 seeds from Group A, or I guess it's Group A and Group B. I was like, is it Group 1 or Group 2? No, Group A and Group B. But I do want to give a shout out to Order. I cast in OPL for a long time. I've been part of the Oceanic scene in the past, and this has been a really long time coming. I know that it's been like Direwolves and Legacy and Pentanet and Mammoth, but it hasn't really ever been Order, which is hilarious because Order is formerly known as Chiefs, so the Chiefs organization, and the Chiefs and Legacy ruled Oceania. They're like Fnatic and G2 every single time, and then when it came time for an international appearance, they kind of disappeared. So I'm actually super stoked to see Order take the international stage. It's so unfortunate though, because every single time OS is like, we're gonna make it this time, boom, group with NA and EU in it. Good luck, guys. It's so OS, it's so perfect.
I mean, but is it easier? Like, we can get to talking about Group C later on if you want,
Are we
but I also debate, like, is it easier to take down NA and EU than it is to, like, try and get a game off an RNG or, like, consistently beat a DFM and a Saigon? Like, I wonder if you can just play a little bit into the motivation that beating NA or beating EU gives you as an Oceanic player. Because I'm not saying like,
I mean,
yeah,
the advantage is that like someone just messes up once, then you can like kind of pop out. But I think everyone agrees that you would rather be, you know, if you had the option of, I have to either be EEG, G2, or Saigon Buffaloes. Everyone's like,
yeah,
I'm taking the
okay.
Buffaloes.
Yeah, I'd probably take the Buffaloes.
Yeah,
there.
yeah, for sure. But
As
I
far
think
as
it's
oh,
really
go Brock.
interesting for me to see the matchups as well, because the past years we've seen so many Oceanic players like go to the other side of the pond, right? We've seen some in Europe, but it's mostly in North America. And now seeing those
This is
players who are still
actually
left
just
in the region.
tryouts for North America right
Oh,
now.
that's what I was about to say. That now, you know, seeing them match up against each other, the last standing players from that region go up against NA. That's gonna be pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie, and I wouldn't be surprised if those players have it in the back of their mind. You know, the older players that, you know, if they take these guys down, then they're kind of selling themselves pretty well to the region, right?
It's really unfair that North America gets 2 teams in this group. Like, WTF, guys.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
pretty one-sided if you look at
Imagine.
it, right?
Okay, as far as looking at Group A and Group B, I think everyone is decided that T1 and RNG are the favorites. Yes?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who are number 2s? Now, I personally lean towards PSG Talon just because of you know, previous history, but in this group, I actually think Group B is looking pretty stacked. I know Detonation Focus Me, like you can maybe make an argument that Group A is also stacked because Detonation Focus Me at the most recent last international tournament did start to pop off, but historically it's usually been Turkey and Southeast Asia that are kind of the strongest emerging regions. And with Group B having both the LPL representative, the C representative, Turkey, like I'm like that's a pretty packed group for minor or emerging regions.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think if GAM had come, I would have put I would say Group A was like about the same level as Group B in terms of emerging regions. But right now, DFM should be like the standout favorite second place from Group A, especially considering of how much their roster they kept. I think they just replaced mid and support from the last time we saw them on the international stage. And then Group B, as you say, like PSG continues to go from strength to strength, having Unified in instead of having to sub in Doggo, hopefully not having any visa issues like they had at MSI last year, means that they have the actual roster that they've been playing with, rather like they subbed in Doggo. I think they subbed in D at one point as well. Like they just kept having to make changes last year. And then like Wildcat should be a lot of fun to watch as well. I think it's Holy Phoenix coming back. That group is the group of AD carries. I'm gonna be honest. Like there's so many good AD carries in that group.
At all of the names coming back. We've got Unified coming back, Hanabi, Holy Phoenix, Utapon again is coming back. Like there are so many iconic names that it feels like go away for months at a time.
Like Cheetan was at Worlds 2018. I actually remember interviewing him and forgetting his name as I was interviewing him because we were like doing night shifts or something. I was interviewing him next to him. He was like, "Thank you so much, AD carry for Kaboom." I think he was playing. It's like, I was so new to cast. I felt so bad. But yeah, he played really well last time we saw him as well because I think he replaced BRTT at one point on the team. Or like BRTT left, and then it was Titan who came in and like started to step into his shoes a little bit. So there's that group is just stacked in AD carry, stacked generally. I'm really looking forward to watching Group B.
Is there any players in specific, Broxah, that you're excited to see come back to the international stage?
Well, I think one name you mentioned that always brings me memories is Hanabi, because the only time I played MSI in 2018. I think that was Hanabi's first international event. And I remember us playing against them. I don't remember if they were called, was it PSG back then? What were they called?
I mean, he played for
no, it was
Flash
Wolves.
Yeah,
It was Flash
Yeah.
Wolves back then, right? And I just remember this guy like wandering all around the map, just being a playmaker, doing all sorts of crazy plays. I think he was playing On back then or something, and we were just memeing about how next level this guy was, you know, just wandering around as a top laner, making big plays the entire game. So seeing his name definitely brings back memories for me, back to 2018. But overall, obviously Group C is like the obvious group that's exciting for the Western regions, but I also think Group B could be really hype because RNG obviously is the clear favorite. PSG, I would also say is second, but at the same time, both CB, LoL, and TCL have had teams the past years who have been really solid, and I don't think it's too unlikely that one of those two regions come in really strong and, possibly take that second place away from PSG.
Or the first
As
place,
far-
just smack RNG down a little
Yeah.
bit, 100%.
But
RNG's laning phase
You
is
never,
the best.
you never know, but I feel like, those LPL teams are just so crazy. I would be surprised if RNG doesn't sweep that group. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like Chinese teams are really, really scary, really disciplined as well usually. But hey, like if CB LOL, for example, is just 6-0s the group, like that would be pretty hype. I'm not gonna lie.
Just kaboom it all, It'd be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's a fun prediction because I know that it's really hard, especially when it's best of one, like double round robin. Like predictions always go out the window because something crazy always happens. But what do you think is most likely that T1, RNG, EG, or G2 have a perfect group stage? Like, is it more likely that T1 goes undefeated or RNG goes undefeated? Or, if you guys want, one of the North American and European representatives goes undefeated.
I think it's most likely T1 go undefeated, personally. Just because I do think RNG
I also think they're in the weaker group.
Yeah, I think they're in the weaker group, and also they've shown less weakness in their domestic league, right? Like T1, laning phase was strong, mid game was strong, team starting was strong. Like they made a few mistakes here and there, but there was no like glaring, I think they aren't as good as they could be in this section, right? Whereas RNG, very strong team, but even coming into finals, lots of people looked at them and said, hey, their laning phase, their early game isn't actually as good as it could be. Often they fall behind and have to fight back, right? So I think, especially in a group that is likely to bring out a little bit more explosiveness or a little bit more cheese, as you say, best of ones give you that room to like bring something special out for a game. RNG are more likely to drop a game. And obviously G2 are going to sweep their group as well. So like G2 and T1 will go undefeated to the group stage.
I'm really excited to see what T1 is going to look like this tournament because I feel like everyone's expecting them to just destroy their way throughout the entire tournament and barely drop a game for a good reason. Because, like you said, RNG, which is the second favorite, they've shown clear weaknesses. And EU, despite both being on big win streaks with EG and G2, have shown clear weaknesses. T1 just looked not perfect, but near perfect in the LCK, right? So I'm actually so excited to see if they're just gonna come in and just stomp everyone and quickly grab the trophy and leave and go back home, or if there's actually gonna be a tournament to be played, if there's gonna be competition.
Okay, well, those were the easy predictions out the way. It's very easy to be like, yeah, T1 looking good, probably very heavy favorites. But let's start the flame war. Okay, Group C, we're hyper focusing. Evil Geniuses, G2, and Order. What are the predictions? Who comes out number one? Do you guys have a clear favorite? Because I know at LCS finals, JoJo threw down the gauntlet and was talking some big smack. I think, quote, we're gonna shit on Europe.
Yeah, it's the Fortnite genes coming through there a little bit, I think.
Those Fortnite players are
yeah, really good. Yeah, the proper bants. It's like the Call of Duty players of old, I love a bit of smack talk before games. I think like the ability to banter and have fun. It's one of the reasons I always love watching Double Lift, because he was always willing to like dish it out, and then afterwards he'd be like gracious in defeat or like magnanimous in victory, which I quite like. But I think. And I may be overreaching here, but I think G2 might have slightly more experience on the international stage than some of these players on EG Impact, but definitely than inspired JoJo, Danny, and Vulcan. And as much as JoJo can say that he thinks he's going to, slap Caps around a little bit, Caps has heard that before. He's heard that before from a few players. One of them, who plays for T1, and Faker lost to Caps. And RNG have lost to Caps, and I haven't seen EG beating either of those recently. So I mean, obviously it's a little like pushing the boat out a bit, but I think G2 are just generally the stronger team. Top lane relatively even. Jungle I give to Jankos over Inspired. I think the jungle mid duo Caps and Jankos are better than Inspired Jojo. Not to like put Jojo down, but he's just not as experienced and doesn't have like the depth of either champion pool or of sort of read on the early game that I think Caps has. Caps' movement in the early game is very strong for G2 in playoffs. And then bot lane, I think Danny and Vulcan are not the strongest laners in the world. I don't think Flakked and Targamas are either, but I think the weakness that G2 has there is neutralized by the fact that EG have the same weakness. So because I give the rest of the map to G2, I then give the whole map to G2. Jojo's
I
gonna
also
get
don't
slapped.
think.
Send it back to NA.
I also think it's the type of match that's going to be determined by the mid jungle duo, because I just have a hard time seeing G2 versus EG break open in side lanes. I think, as Medic said, like the bot lanes are not like the strongest laners of all. Both sides just want to get to team fights really. If they're even and then get to team fights, they're really happy. Top lane, I think both have been like really stable rocks for their team. I have a hard time seeing one, dominate the other, to be honest. And then it really comes down to the mid jungle where, yeah, again, Jankos and Caps are just so experienced. They've been so dominant, and I think Jojo's inexperience in international tournaments is probably gonna haunt EG, especially because Caps looked really angry in the LEC in the finals. Like he was angry in how he played. Like he was so aggressive, he just went crazy. And then when you looked at his camera, he was just having the time of his life, smiling, chilling, just enjoying every moment. And I think a Caps was just so relaxed and happy. This is the scariest Caps you can possibly meet. And I have a hard time seeing Jojo survive against him. I'm not gonna lie.
And the thing is,
It's so interesting. Oh, sorry, you go, Medic.
No, I was gonna say, the thing is, if Jojo and EG come out and they match G2, and if they beat G2, like all power to them. That's incredible for them, and it's gonna be such a great development for the region and for North America and for like these new players that North America seems to be beginning to foster. But just because we think they're gonna lose to G2 generally, I don't think that means that we think like they are a bad team in any way. Like they would get second in any group.
This
It's just
guy
they're not.
covering his
I mean,
bases.
here's the thing. I said Caps is gonna
45.
slap Jojo, and I feel I need to add a little bit of I actually think NA is quite good at the moment, which is true. But Caps is still gonna slap Jojo, and Danny. Yeah, sure, you can team fight, but come on, mate, you're not gonna be able to team fight when Jankos is Flash Bear slapping you in your face, mate. Come on.
I'm not gonna pull my punches. I was watching that final of LCS, and I was like, EG have such a massive lead here, and they have no idea how to push it because they have no idea how to manufacture fights on the map. They have to like wait for their opponent to make a mistake into them, and then they capitalize on it. I'm like, this is bad news bears.
You're saying the enemy team being 0 HP on Baron and Jinx getting a penta isn't only Danny really making incredible plays? You're saying maybe he was put in a position where it was quite easy for him to get the penta?
Don't get me wrong. I think that North America has showcased a lot better individual skill talent, like players that are better at pressing their buttons mechanics-wise, which hasn't always been true in the past. I am very concerned for the proactive play that happens in North America because, again, I still think that a lot of teams are relying on people making mistakes into them and then capitalizing on mistakes as opposed to engineering their own successful plays and then just playing better than their opponent. That said, I find it really interesting, this discussion about experience, because we all agree, and we basically saw it play out in majority of finals internationally, that having these experienced players like the Caps and the Jankos really helps. But it's really interesting with EG because they went through some of the most experienced rosters and players in not just their league, but in the world. And yeah, you can say that they have guys like Impact and Vulcan to a much lesser degree, mostly Impact in terms of like international and experience credibility. But it's just, I find it, when Caps and Perks and even Humanoid went international, let's use Humanoid because it's probably the most recent. Humanoid now is a household name for Europe. Very strong mid laner. when he went international with Splice, you know, no one was like, the inexperience. Everyone's like, Humanoid, kind of like, bit of a coin flip there. He's going to play aggressive. Maybe if he's on a champion with a blink, it's not going to be pretty. But then, you know, manages to pop off. And I remember talking to his coach and just talking about how Humanoid had like this killer mindset, that he didn't care who he was playing against. So I'm curious if we maybe see the same thing in JoJo, that he's just got this, that this is going to be the breakout international. You know, this could be the start for North American fans and fans of JoJo and Danny, that, you know, maybe JoJo goes in there and it's Vedius on mic being like, holy shit, he just solo killed Caps.
I mean, quite possibly,
You know what I mean?
yeah. And that killer mindset is definitely something you need from a mid laner. It's something we've seen in all the great EU mids, like Perks had it, Caps had it, Forbiven had it, Froggen had it, Alex Itch had. Like, you go back and each,
Froggen had it.
I mean, yeah, Froggen still had the killer mindset. Like, just because he's often, you know, stood back and let the Ice Storm do the killing, he still had the killer mindset. But like,
I was with you. I was like,
Okay, everyone apart from Froggen. Take Froggen out of the list. So just listing good EU mid laners. But yeah, like, having that killer mindset is so important, especially for a mid laner where you have a lot of agency and you have a lot of ability to like impact the map generally. And I actually want to back up that point about JoJo with something Andrew Barton said. Andrew Barton's the GM for EG, so the general manager. And he came out saying this whole discussion around NA rookies is actually really interesting to me, because they have put a lot of value in NA rookies generally. And they have Peter Dunn and Nazar, is that how you pronounce his name? Empire. Both of them do a lot of scouting, and they're like, we put a lot of time into making sure these guys can scout for us in NA. But when we got rookies, we didn't just look for like rookies that were talented. We then looked for what players we could put around them that facilitated them best. And so with Danny last year, they just said, all you have to do is learn how to team fight like a god. We don't expect you to do anything else. And they put him with a strong support and a strong jungler and a strong mid laner who could like help him do that. And then now with JoJo, they've said, okay, all we want you to do is learn how to win your lane and win mid lane, and we'll give you Inspired and Impact and these other guys that can do the things you will eventually have to do. But right now, we just want you to be a rookie with the killer mindset that you're talking about, Frosk. And I think something in the past that we've seen a lot is people, when they see NA rookies, they see a team of 5 new NA players, and they kind of think, oh, we want the C9s, you know, the Balls, the High, the Meteos, the Sneaky, like the full 5 NA players. But what I've loved with EG is they developed into this, we will put NA talent with very experienced players from other regions or from NA, depending on, you know, where you can find the people you need, but not just put them like out to dry, instead have that support system for them. So I think that's why JoJo stands out so much, and why Danny stands out so much at the moment is not just because they're incredibly skilled, but because EG have put them in a position where they can succeed and they don't have to do everything.
I think this is a really important point, actually, because I feel like this is something that teams are often failing at, right? When building their teams, where you can end up in a situation like an Astralis, I guess, where you have a bunch of inexperienced players, but they don't really seem to have a leader from the outside, and everything falls apart. Or you can have someone like a Vitality, which is the opposite, that has a lot of experienced players, but that still don't really have an identity and a way of working together. And I think having people who can lead the team, whether it's coaches, whether it's veteran players, in an ideal world, both, to just get that structure, get all the fundamentals down, and just create a situation where everyone knows what their job is, I think is so important. And G2 is kind of similar, right? They have Flagged and Targamas, who are also relatively new, but they have really experienced coaches who have set the structures. They have Yankers, Caps, and Broken Blade. And in both cases, it's the teams with 3 veterans and 2 rookies who end up coming out on top, because they just managed to develop so much faster than everyone else throughout playoffs. And, you know, eventually no one could really beat them, right? It's pretty interesting to see how the structure is so similar in both.
100%. And you look at G2 and they played predominantly topside for like the first 6-7 weeks of the LEC. It was all about, how do we get Broken Blade to carry? How do we put this guy ahead? How do we play topside of the map? And then you got to like, they lost to Fnatic, and you got to the rest of their playoffs run, and you started seeing Broken Blade on Ornn. You started seeing playing tanks. It's like, oh, we don't actually only have to play for topside now. Flack and Targamas have developed to the position where we can play mid jungle to bot, or we can just play through bot side, or we can do all these other things, and like giving them the time to develop into that role is what I think EG have done with Danny and Jojo, and what G2 have done with Flakked and Targamas, and what really helps you elevate your team in the long run and elevate your rookies in the long run.
So, as far as kind of continuing on and looking at the larger group stage, is there? I know this is like a dangerous question to ask because again, everything goes up in the air. What does success look like if you're a LCS or an LEC fan heading into MSI? Like, what do you think are actual like tangible predictions to be made? Is this LCS must make it out of groups and must make it out of the Rumble stage? Or is this you just want JoJo and Danny to have a good showcase? Does G2 need to take down a LPL or LCK team? Like, what do you guys feel from both your respective regions that fans A would be okay with, the teams would probably be okay with, and what you think is actually like a reasonable goal?
You want to go first, Broxah? I've been talking a lot, so.
That's a good question, to be honest. Well, I was just thinking about it. Well, I know the LCS fans very well at this point, and the LCS at Worlds has been so close to having teams make it out of groups every time, and I think for the fans in the LCS, being close to making it far isn't really good enough anymore. They seem very unhappy about being close, and I think for them, I don't know if it's a fair expectation to put on a team like EG yet, that they, will make it far, possibly make it into the top 4. But honestly, I think, they should be able to, because while they have these newer players, they also have so many experienced players, experienced coaches around them that can guide them and that can take them to the top. And I think a team like EG should have a legitimate chance at actually making it to the top 4 this tournament. G2 is going to be the same story. And I think in an ideal world, as a Western fan, it's not impossible to have both NA, EU in the top 4 with C1 and RNG. I think the main team who could stop that from happening would probably be PSG Talon, realistically speaking. And I think it would be okay for people from EU and NA to be disappointed if it does happen. But yeah, I don't know. I think most of all, just I would see this as like a stepping stone towards Worlds, because if both of them can gain a lot from them and get the experience, get the knowledge from scrimming all the other international teams, if they can then utilize that to improve coming into Worlds, I think that's what's the most important. Because in my mind, what I have experienced is that you learn by far the most when you play international tournaments. And MSI probably is the best opportunity to do that, because after Worlds, there's always roster changes. A team never stays together after Worlds. Teams never actually get to improve after Worlds. But now, G2 and EG get to scrim all these teams. They get to go home afterwards. They're going to stick together. And then they can continue improving throughout the split going into Worlds as well. So, yeah, I guess for me, top 4, EU and NA would be ideal. But even if it doesn't happen, I think it's still a good stepping stone going into Worlds.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think from an EU biased perspective, I would be very disappointed if G2 didn't make top 4. I think if they lost to both PSG and EG, that like the two expected people that would knock them out of that top 4, that would be underperforming and would make me worry more about like Europe's strength in like my mental map of like how strong each region is. Because like G2 dominated EU after going into the losers bracket. If they then lost to both PSG and EG, I'm like, well, maybe Europe generally is a little bit lower than I thought it was, and I'd have to like reevaluate where my rankings of each region are. I think for EG, like getting knocked out in Rumble stage would be acceptable, although not exemplary, and getting to the top 4 would be really what you'd want from them. I worry a little bit with the momentum that is currently being ridden by, and this is from an outside viewpoint on NA fans, and just on the NA discussion, that like a lot of people are very hyped for EG because of Danny and JoJo, and I worry if they suffer a couple of disappointing losses, perhaps if they lose a couple of games to Order, or if they lose to PSG and they don't make top 4, unless they like perform well and just get unlucky, I worry that perhaps that the sort of excitement for the region will be quashed a little bit. just because people tend to swing a little bit and fans tend to swing a little bit on players when they disappoint them internationally. I mean, we had like the whole G2 vacation memes, etc., when G2 were disappointing Europe internationally. So I think that even if EG don't make top 4, they have still put on a very good run in NA, and assuming that they can put challenges against some of the top teams, then that should be a good performance for them. And as you say, Broxah, the experience that the roster's going to get and that the players are going to get on an international stage is really good, especially the newer players. Like, even Inspired, Inspired hasn't played a huge amount of international games. Obviously, Impact has played a couple in his time, and Vulcan, I think, has had a few as well. But it'll be really good for that team just to get some stage games and get some scrim time against Korean teams and against people in that ecosystem as well, right? So,
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I can look at the system where it's groups, Rumble stage, and then the knockout stage, if EG and G2 make top 4 alongside RNG and T1, the expected major regions, couldn't you have a semifinal where it's EU versus NA and then LPL versus LCK, and then that means that a Western team is representing in the finals no matter what?
I mean, we could just have a G2TL situation as well, where they both we beat NA, we beat China, we beat LCK, and we get through. I think it's first v fourth, right? Is it first v fourth, second v third, for the playoffs? I think that's how it works. It may be choice. I can't remember exactly for MSI, but if it's first 4, second, third, then it's hard for NA to play EU because either G2 comes
All I'm
forward.
saying is that there's a chance.
There's 100% the possibility that a Western team makes it through. But I think the expectation is T1 first, RNG second, and then a mixture of G2, EG, and PSG filling out those final 2 spots.
Yeah.
Okay. So if, just to put a little bow on it, we say top 4 for both LEC and LCS. We were a little bit soft on LEC and G2. I think it's fine to be like LCS, everyone wants them to get to the semifinals, obviously, at least. But LEC, Medic, are you okay? I mean, also Broxah, are you okay if G2 make top 4 and then just absolutely dive bomb out? Or do you want them to put up a fight?
Yeah, you're never happy when a team dive bombs out, right? Like, you're never happy when it's a 0-3 and you don't think your team's put on a good performance. I would like G2 to take a game off someone. I was gonna say if they play RNG, I'd like them to at least win a game, perhaps be challenging for the series. Whereas
really,
if it's
you're
T1,
it's good enough if it's 3-1.
I mean, it's not good enough, right? It's good enough, but it's not like what I really want. If I tell you what I really want, I want G2 to win the whole thing. I want Faker to swim home crying. I want him to give up League of Legends forever.
On the jersey.
I want RNG to be like
world championships.
Yeah, exactly. I want the second star. Although, come on, Ocelot. It's not a world championship, man. It's MSI. It's an international tournament. It's not a world championship. Don't call it a world championship. We know you're just doing it for the engagement. Anyway, yeah, I want G2 to win. But if G2 put up a good challenge against either RNG or T1, against T1, if they win a game, I'm happy, I will say, I think, depending on what the teams look like on the meta of MSI. And against RNG, if they win a game and get close to winning a second or maybe challenge for the series, I'm happy as well. But I'm not satisfied until we have another title for Europe.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about...
I think that's fair.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say that I think I actually do think G2 has to be able to compete at least a little bit. I think if they get smashed by RNG / T1, huh?
They have a baby bot lane.
So,
well,
guys are G2 has to go all the way.
They beat Upset and Hillsang. They beat one of the best bot lane, the bot lane we talked about is the best bot lane in the West. They destroyed them. Upset and Hillsang did not enjoy that lane.
Upset chokes every single time it's an important match, and Hilly is either a god or he's, you know what I mean?
Well, the thing is,
you just can't call them babies and excuse it, right? ED, Suning with babies. We've seen babies win world championships. If you talk about international experience, you don't get an excuse because it's your first time.
Not everyone on T1 has experience either, and RNG didn't look that consistent, right? So it's not like they're flawless. There's actually hope. And the thing is, with G2, if you look at the roster, the bot lane is really an experience. But Broken Blade is the first player to win in both EU and NA. Yankers has been in a world final. Caps has been in a world final twice. Dylan, their head coach, has been in a world final.
Perks and
Like,
Sven have won EU and NA before as well. But Broken Blade was the first guy to go NA first, then EU, I think. Which
that's how it was. You're right. My bad.
That's
But
right.
he has won in both regions. That is the main point I wanted to get across.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was the main point I wanted to get across. They are really loaded on experience. So they do have a rookie bot lane, but let's say Stu's for T1, for example. He's a rookie as well. And RNG looked kind of shaky. So who knows, right? I think like we need to see G2 actually, not just getting smashed. They need to show up. They need to have some close games at the very least, in my opinion.
So no vacation. Okay. Guys, let's talk about the NA ecosystem because that has been, it feels like since the leagues, all the finals have finished and everyone's now just waiting for MSI, that the discussion has moved on to where can we create drama and trauma next? And it's now in this like Twitter, Reddit war between like prominent league analysts and like Reddit people where we're talking about this like EG winning proves that you don't need to spend $1 bazillion to win LCS. And I will go on record and say, I have talked to many a GM in LCS, and I've had at least 3 of them tell me explicitly that you need to spend big money to win the LCS. That it's like, you can't do anything else. So I've got at least 3 GMs on record saying that to me, and it seems like EG just like just lobbed a grenade in that and just blew everything up. Is this good, bad? Are we happy? Do you agree?
I think the question is, if you're just talking about it from a financial point of view, I don't think Inspired and Impact come that cheap. I'll be honest. I think they did spend money.
But are they as expensive as TL, 100 Thieves?
They're definitely not. But I think the point is, like, going into you have to spend some money. I think you do, right? Some money will buy you some success, but how you use that money is the important thing. And it's what we talked about with Andrew tweeting out. Like, it wasn't just about buying the best players. Yes, they bought the LEC MVP. Yes, they bought a world champion, but they also bought people that would make their players play better, or they would fill the gaps that they wanted to fill for their players. And you see some other teams, and I'm sure they are. I'm not going to say any specific team here because I don't know the decision making behind some teams, some players being bought, and I don't want to assume. But like, you sometimes see a roster and you say, you just bought the 5 most expensive people. You just bought the 5 stars. Actually, you know what? I will say Vitality. I think with Vitality, you can look at them and you say, you just bought 5 expensive players and you thought they'd work well together. And maybe they scrimmed really well together. Maybe there was something behind that meant that there was more than just the 5 expensive players. But a lot of the time, teams will just look for pricey options and think price buys success, rather than thinking, okay, we can allocate money here and spend money here because it then allows us to facilitate Danny and facilitate Jojo and put these people on a pedestal because we back them up with a strong supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Just as a note, Broxah streams for TL, everyone, so just be aware of, You playing jungle for them next year, Broxah? Is that the strat? We just bring in a new EU player across?
Would you like to make any announcements?
Yeah, wait. Oh, sorry, I just got a call coming from Steve. Oh, no, mind. No, I definitely think it seems like we're slowly starting to have a recipe to success, right? Which is to find a good mix of rookies and veterans, and you can't really do either or. Like, if you only go veterans, it can work, but it's a bit harder to pull it off. Like, G2 has done it a couple of times. CL, I think, was a lot closer to pulling it off the split than someone like Vitality was, but they were still like a little bit shaky towards the end. And we've also had other teams that go in the opposite direction. LCS, for example, I think maybe the most inexperienced roster that comes to my mind is CLG. They have contracts in the jungle, who's been around for a lot of years, but most of the other players are pretty new, right? And that kind of fell apart for them. So I think you need to spend a bit. You don't necessarily have to buy all the most expensive players in every role, because I think a lot of teams seem to approach it wrong, thinking that you can just pick star players and then they magically work together. Medic mentioned that maybe they've been tryouting. Well, it's actually extremely rare that when you look for these big names that there's even tryouts. It's not something I've heard about the past years. It's just you just have some conversations. As the big name, you have conversations with the team. If everyone's happy, you just sign your contract, and then you don't really know for sure what's going to happen before you actually, sit with your team in January when you start scrimming, right? And I think
Much of team decisions are made by the players, because I know that every team's going to be different, every team makeup's going to be different, but my assumption is that when you have a lot of these veteran names, essentially what you're buying is you're buying for coaching staff. You're buying players that know, because they've done and they've been around for so long that they just know these answers to things, so they know how to like meet a certain standard level because they already have all of that information. Whereas I feel like the number one thing that teams don't know how to do is develop players, which is why you have to see like a mix of this, because you're effectively leaning on your veteran players to develop your new players, because there's no standardized level of coaching or analysis. And there's probably going to be teams that do it better or worse and different combinations, obviously, but that's how I view it. I'm like, you have your veterans because no one actually really knows how to coach in this game, and they help develop, but then eventually everyone hits a wall, and then that's why when we see like massive leaps of like teams unlocking themselves, it's usually through roster changes and not like a switch being flipped because someone was able to like train it into a player.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good point. And I think in general, when it comes to like leadership, even some veterans don't have it, right? It's like specific types that seem to do it really well. One name that comes to my mind is Vulcan. Like when I look in the LCS stream and I see after every game, Vulcan goes directly to Danny, to Jojo, and he, talks to them, and you can see that this guy is like an actual leader who helps these guys and who's made a difference for them. And when that is visible, that's obviously great, right? But you need to have a mix of both, because there's like some coaches who are really valuable, but there's also teams where the coaches don't have that big of a say and where it's kind of run by players. And I think that's usually where it can become a bit tricky, especially if you have a lot of veterans, right? Because what can happen if you have a team with a lot of veterans is that all of them have a lot of experience. They have a lot of strong opinions on how the game should be played. Those opinions clash, and if you don't have a coach with authority who can then make the final decision and to put the players in their place, then you have a team who's really split and who will never be able to find that identity and actually play as a team, right? And I think some veteran players will be able to figure it out on their own. But I think in general, if you don't have that authority figure, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a coach. It just has to be someone higher up who has the final say, right? Then it's always going to be a little bit tricky.
Refocusing back to MSI now that week of drama and the NA ecosystem discussion is over. Obviously, RNG, because of the current lockdown COVID situation in Shanghai, will be playing in MSI remote. Now, Riot has said that they're going to standardize ping to 35 across the board. So I kind of have two questions here. The first one is more so to Broxah as a professional player playing on these stages. How big of a difference is 35 ping to, let's say, 0 ping or 6 ping when you're playing on stage? Can you still play champions like a Lee Sin as effectively? And then the other part of this question is, do you think this gives either an advantage to RNG playing at home or a disadvantage to RNG?
Well, there's no doubt that, playing on a lower ping does make a difference. That's part of why European players keep going to Korea. It's not only to play against the good Korean and Chinese players, it's also because of the ping, because the lower your ping is, the more smooth everything is going to feel. And especially when you play highly mechanical champions, like Lee Sin, for example, you can feel a difference. At the same time, in my opinion, 35 ping is still more than fine. I think in North America, when I came over there, it was really hard. I was about to say impossible. I'll just say it was really hard to get used to playing on 60 ping, because that's where it starts feeling like you're actually lagging when you're used to playing on a lower ping. Whereas I didn't feel as big of a difference coming from Europe to Korea, for example. Like you could feel it a little bit, but everything just still feels smooth and clean when you're playing the game. And in that sense, I think the change is probably going to be best for G2, honestly, because in Europe we have around 35 ping, which is what they're going to be playing on. So G2 is used to playing on that in solo queue for years and years. In NA, they're used to playing on like either 9 ping or 60 ping, depending on if they're playing, scrims or solo queue. Korea is used to playing low. I think China is lower as well. So G2 is probably the team who benefits the most, because for them, this is just like a standard day playing EU solo queue. Again, I think it's something that the teams should be able to get used to relatively quickly. I don't think it's a big deal. Like if it was 50 or 60 ping, I think it would matter a lot more. But in my mind, as long as it's under 40, it's like it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. So I think maybe T1 is going to be the team that's actually hurt the most, because being Koreans, they're used to always having super low ping, and I think most other regions are like, play on like higher or lower or like shift depending on if they play solo queue or like scrims in official games, whereas they're just always on low ping.
We see Faker miss a flash, everyone's like, ping!
Well, I also think since it is 35, I don't think it can really be an excuse for everyone. Like I've seen a lot of comments about it on social media at this point. Like people have very mixed opinion on whether this is good or bad, or whether it should just only be RNG was playing at 35 ping and everyone else plays on low ping. But in my mind, this is the only way to actually make it fair for everyone, because now everyone's just playing on an even ground. The game is still gonna feel nice, not as nice as 9 ping or below 10, but it's still gonna be okay, and they're gonna be fine. They'll be able to make their flashy combos, flashy plays, and I think that's really the most important part.
That's the thing. Everyone talks about like it's awful to play on 35 ping. I can't believe we're doing this. It's like, what other option is there? Like either RNG plays on high ping and then it's not a competitive. There's no competitive integrity there because one team has a disadvantage, or you say LPL can't come, and then it's like, well, why have MSI then if you can't get the reigning champions and the world champions? And so yes, it sucks. Yes, we would all love to play on 9 ping, and it would be great if we could, but 35 ping is the only way to standardize it. And as much as Broxah says, right, 9 ping would be ideal. 35 ping, an extra 20 milliseconds is like 2 years older in terms of reaction time. Like your reactions increase by about 10 milliseconds a year after 24 for normal athletes. So if you're 2 years older than your opponent, you're already playing on 35 ping when they're playing on 15 ping. So.
How old's Jojo?
Oh, he's 17. Actually, no, Jojo 17? Has a buff. Oh, Jojo's so buffed. Oh, she's going to win
the
MSI.
The stars are aligning.
He actually has negative reaction speeds. He reacts before things happen.
I was curious if he was 20 and then the ping would put him over 21. I'm like, he can legally drink now. Only in game, though. No, I think it's interesting that a lot of people, at least I haven't really seen it, the discussion, because like we all knew that playing online, that it was going to help certain teams because they wouldn't have like the stage performance issues or anything like that, whereas obviously G2, Caps, and Yanko specifically seem to really thrive playing in front of a crowd and on stage. So I personally think it's actually a huge advantage for RNG to play from their like home base in their comfortable scenario, even if the ping is kind of standardized across the board. I'm like, ooh, that's a really scary RNG, because that's probably a really comfortable RNG. So
yeah, definitely.
What do you guys think of the MSI format? Is there any changes? And again, for the viewers who don't know, it's a rumble stage, or excuse me, it's a group stage into a rumble stage. So top 2 teams from each group go to the rumble stage, and then top 4 from rumble stage go to the knockout stage, which automatically starts in semifinals and our best ofs. Is there any additions? Would you guys like to go to the double elimination format? Do you think that the format's fine as it is?
I mean, I think double elimination is always more fun, just because like if we see RNG play EG and T1 play G2 and EG and G2 get knocked down, then it's like, oh, one of them's going to make the lower bracket run again. We'll see which one of them can do it all the way to the finals. And it gives us more best of 5s as well. I think groups into Rumble it was a change made a few years ago, and a lot of people raised complaints about it because they don't think like RNG, T1, or like G2, EG should be in this initial phase with the emerging regions. But I actually think it gives the emerging regions, good stage time against higher quality opposition in a lot of the cases, and gives you the opportunity to have some of those upsets, some of those Pentanet moments where perhaps it gives you great exposure as well, right? So some of those games can feel a little tedious at times, but for the fans of, if you're not a fan of the region, but for the fans of those regions, those are some of the biggest games of the year. Like, you get to watch your region take on RNG or take on T1. It's something you dream of, and as a player, it's something you dream of being able to do, right? Because perhaps you are the Kaboom, perhaps you are the Pentanet that manages to get a game off them. So it does, sometimes it can feel like you have filler games, but if you look at it from a fan's perspective for those regions, they're not filler games at all.
Oh, the Brazilian and Vietnamese viewership is going to be popping when they run into one of the tier 1 teams. Broxah, anything you'd like to add to this?
Well, I agree on the double elimination point. Like, if we didn't have double elimination, both EG and G2 wouldn't even have made it to MSI, right? And I think when comparing the system in EU and NA now to what it was when I came into the LEC or ULCS, it's so much better, because back then, whenever you had lost one series in playoffs, you were just out immediately. But now there's so much hype, there's so much potential for comeback stories, and I think it just creates the ultimate amount of hype. So I'm also a pretty big fan of double elimination, but I do think this is at the very least a better middle ground than what we've seen in the past.
I find it interesting that we don't bracket reset in double elim, that you don't have to like beat the finalists. Like, you know, if someone goes through to finals and doesn't drop, but then a loser comes in and pops out, I'm like, feels kind of bad.
Yeah, I get that. Especially like fighting game communities, the bracket reset's a huge thing, right? Like you have to win a series, then win another series. I think most of the time it's just scheduling and business point of view, right? Like, how do you do 2 best of 5s on the same day if the first one goes to 5 games? Like, you're there until 3 a.m. Or do you book the venue for the Monday after the finals as well and try and do both, right?
I'm really curious if we'll ever see like format changes where kind of like how the NBA has, where you play like multiple days worth of I guess we'd play multiple days of best of series. And if there's ever going to be a day in the future where you have like 3 days and you're playing a best of 5 every single day, if you have some sort of bracket reset. But I don't know, like, I like it how it is, and I agree with you. Shit's expensive. It's expensive to turn on those studios to get people to like.
I mean, it gets easier when you own the stadium like they do in the NBA, right? It's slightly easier to sell tickets and to light everything up when your team owns the stadium. So maybe in the LPL we'll start seeing it.
Okay, so we're winding down to the end of the episode. Are there any juicy roster rumors that you guys are super stoked about? Anything noteworthy popping out there? Or are you guys just like, I don't even have time to look at this right now. I am balls deep at MSI prep.
Broxah, are you going to announce where you're going? Or should we talk about it?
Is this where I go change clothes and put on my Fnatic jersey?
That was a rumor I heard a couple of weeks ago, that you were going to Fnatic alongside. Where was Niski going?
Why are you putting this guy on the spot now?
Broxah and I talked about it a little bit. I don't know how much he wants to talk about it. He can leak.
We're gonna see like a Cadril moment where Cadril's like,
"Oh, Vitality! Oh, I'm not coaching." There's the Niski to Mad rumor, which is a big one. I feel a bit bad for Rika because like replacing him, I don't think he was really the problem. He just wasn't the solution for Mad, right? Mad had really strong early games through Alioyo, and it feels like they needed a humanoid figure who knew how to shot call the mid game, and Rika just didn't seem to have it for them. So now they're bringing in Niski, who's been shown to be a little bit more proactive on the map, and obviously has that experience. Oh, it's not confirmed yet, but that's the big rumor that I'm hearing. That and Xerxes going to Astralis, which could be interesting as well. Zanzaro was let go by them today, so perhaps Xerxes will slot in there. I used to love watching Xerxes, especially on Unicorns. He was a very fun jungler to watch.
Say listening to Xerxes comms, he's pretty brilliant, very big talker.
I also feel pretty bad for Razork, to be honest, because there's been a lot of Fnatic rumors, but most of them have been centered around jungle, and it's like he looked pretty good in playoffs. Actually, he looked pretty alright. It's not like he played bad by any means, but it feels like his poor regular split is kind of haunting him, and a lot of fans, a lot of people around the Fnatic social media, I guess, are just unhappy and more than anything trying to find someone to blame now that they didn't win. And I don't know if Razork was the problem or not. Who knows? All I know is that, I mean, I was in Berlin for their game. That's their last game, and that Fnatic looked pretty broken from the inside out on like almost every position really. So I don't know if you can blame any individual person for what's happening. And it also feels kind of sad that people always feel the need to find a scapegoat.
Yeah.
Because maybe Razork is the problem. Maybe it's Humanoid. Maybe it's someone else. Who knows? None of us can really know because we're not inside that team. Maybe they don't even know. But hopefully, one way or another, Fnatic finds a way to turn things around going into summer split. Because I just saw, like, I still remember how sad Hylisang looked on that stage, and it was pretty depressing to see. To be honest, he looked so sad, and I hope he can start smiling again in summer split.
Aw, I am all for Hilly smiles. So hopefully Fnatic get better soon and hopefully make a better run back in summer. But guys, that is it for us on this episode of Recall. Remind you that we're going to be taking a short break over the course of MSI, but we will be back with episode 5 for a recap of it. And I'm super stoked as we look ahead towards Worlds and everything good that summer plans to bring us, including hopefully a stronger Fnatic. So from Broxah, and I, have a good one.